1% inflation rate, that the cost of living increase for next year for Social Security beneficiaries would be 10.5%. If so, that would be a record high. What that means in practice is that the average check would go up by about $175 a month to a monthly amount of $1,668. But there are some wild cards to this.
So guys, economists are now warning lawmakers of a recession, which may lead everybody to rising poverty in many unemployment states. Now, the IRS has just released new details on the next batch of checks they're sending out, and right now, thousands of dollars can be claimed by many low-income households. But there's a deadline to receive the stimulus check, so be sure to continue watching this video because we get into more important information about the stimulus payments. Like this: if you receive a letter from the IRS, don't ignore it. According to CNBC, you could be one of 9 million people who the tax agency says can still claim thousands of dollars in stimulus and the child tax credit payments. You have to act quick. The IRS said it began mailing letters in October to reach millions of people who haven't claimed benefits like the stimulus checks, earned income tax credit, and the child tax credit. And according to the agency, people who are eligible only have until November 17th to claim the money. During the massive stimulus effort to help keep households afloat and financially afloat during the crisis, the IRS relied on tax returns, everybody, to determine eligibility as well as where to send the payments, as tax returns include bank account information or home address for mailing the checks. But about 9 million Americans have yet to claim the stimulus funds because they just didn't know and file a 2021 tax return. The letters will let people know that they may be eligible and how to claim the money. The IRS said the 9 million people who were identified by the Treasury's Office of Tax Analysis are those who are not required to file taxes because they have very low incomes. Single taxpayers under 65 years of old typically don't have to file a tax return if they earn less than $12,000 a year, so while that goes up to $14,000 for some people. The 2021 Recovery Rebate Credit is the official name of the third round of payments authorized by lawmakers, and is provided up to $1,400 per person, including qualifying children claimed on a tax return. Let's not forget that means a family of 4 could qualify for up to $5,600 in stimulus money. Under the law, the full amount is available to single taxpayers who earn less than $75,000 and married couples who earn less than $150,000. Payments are gradually phased out for people who earn above those thresholds. In this year's hot pace of job creation may have slowed slightly in October, but unemployment is expected to remain very low as companies continue to deal with worker shortages. According to Dow Jones, economists expect about 205,000 jobs, everybody, that were added in October, and forecasting unemployment rate stayed at 3.5%. That compares to job growth of 263,000 in September. Wage growth was expected to have cooled slightly, with average hour wages gaining 0.3% in the month, or 4.7% over a year ago, down from 5% annual pace in September. So for the Federal Reserve, let's talk about this. Economists say the type of job growth that's expected in October is not going to sway the central bank from its aggressive rate hiking path. Jerome Powell said Wednesday that the Fed could reduce the size of its interest rate hikes, but it may need to raise rates to an even higher than expected level just to stop inflation. Economists expect that rate hikes will eventually slow the economy enough to crimp the job market up. So one economist told CNBC that the Fed is now targeting the labor market and is willing to go even further on this. Recent data shows job openings surged in September despite the Fed's effort to cool the historically hot labor market. And this has helped the highest inflation increase since the mid-1980s. Early employment openings for the month totaled 10.7%, and also, if the October payrolls are much stronger than expected, the Fed may not slow its pace of hiking when it next meets on December 13 and 14. The slowdown in housing could actually start to show up slightly in October's jobs, but builders appear to be holding on to workers for now because of labor shortages. Weakness in housing could ripple into financial services if consumers spend less, and that's not something that everybody wants to see. All we know is that President Biden has to do something about this and send out the stimulus payments before it's too late. If you guys agree, tell me in the comments down below.
And we had, I think the guys were with me, the Congress were with me when I invited the CEOs of the auto companies to the White House lawn in the back, behind the White House. And I talked about automobiles, and they talked about electric vehicles. At the time, Amy Barr Chairman Barr of General Motors, was suing the state of California because you had a higher standard for emissions than the rest of the country, and they said they couldn't do that. Well, she left that meeting and she dropped the suit. Called me up and said they're going to go all electric by 2035. Every other company has signed up to do the same thing. So we're working with the auto industry to transition to electric vehicle future, providing tax credits to buy electric vehicles, as well as
2% target, and cautioned that it might not be easy. He also said that it will come at the expense of a 3.6% unemployment rate that is just above the lowest level since the 60s. The U.S. economy saw growth contract at a 1.4% pace in the first quarter of 2022, but tighter monetary policies has added to concerns about a steeper downturn and has sparked criticism. In addition to the 75 basis points in interest rate hikes, the Fed has also halted its monthly bond buying program and will begin shedding some of the $9 trillion in assets that is required starting next month. Big changes have just been confirmed by the federal government, and the IRS is now warning American people that they may have to return some stimulus money. Over the last 2 years, millions of people in the country were financially given aid from the federal government in the form of 3 separate stimulus checks. If you received the full amount for each payment, it came to $3,200 in crisis relief. The last check started arriving in households back in March 2021. But it turns out, not everyone was supposed to keep the money.
And Rich and I showed up, we found that we had hundreds of thousands of borrowers who were eligible to have their loans discharged because they were disabled. They were still paying on those loans. We've now discharged those loans. We had hundreds of thousands of borrowers who claimed they had been cheated by a for-profit college. We've discharged hundreds of thousands of those loans. We have more in progress. And the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which made an important promise to young people that if they spent their careers in public service, we would make sure those loans would be affordable and they would be canceled after 10 years. But only 7,000 people had ever received public service loan forgiveness. That number is now up to 130,000, with more than 1 million receiving progress toward cancellation, thanks to some of the changes that Rich has overseen. So we're working really hard on the challenge of student debt. We're also calling for new investments in Pell Grants, free community college, similar to some of the work the governor has done here. Stronger protections against colleges that leave students with loans they can't afford to repay. A new repayment plan that will be much more affordable for students. So it's an all hands on deck effort here to do whatever we can within our power to make sure that loans are affordable and that people aren't left with debts they can't afford. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is a really important part of it. It's very important to President Biden. And I'll ask Rich to talk a little bit more about the changes that he's implemented there and some of the progress that we're making. Thank you.
James, thank you. Amen to all of the above, and we share the exact same passions and priorities that the President and you and all